The Florida Panthers were in much need of a bounce back after dropping a point in Los Angeles on Sunday as they pay a visit to the Shark Tank on Tuesday night in Joe Thornton's first game back in San Jose after spending 15 seasons there. On today's episode of Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, Jacobs Winans, my colleague, joins me on this Winans Wednesday edition to discuss this 3-2 overtime win against the San Jose Sharks. All on today's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, March 16th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from PantherParkway.com. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark will be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. So, Cats fans, the Florida Panthers found a way to bounce back. Their second and final matchup against the San Jose Sharks. It needed another overtime. It needed a lot of domination late in game, especially at 5-on-5 after the Florida Panthers looked a little bit sloppy coming out of the gate in the first two periods. But here to discuss this 3-2 win against the San Jose Sharks on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast is my friend Jacobs Winans on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Jacob, welcome back.
Good to be here. It's a late one tonight. I am exhausted, but this should be good.
Yes, it is a late show, and my clock reads 11:42 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and I'm going to say the same thing that I said on Sunday night heading into Monday morning. The Scott Van Pelt line from the midnight edition of SportsCenter. I'm not tired yet, so let's discuss this 3-2 win over the San Jose Sharks. So, second trip of this 4-game West Coast trip. Once again, separating these two trips into two different ones, since the Florida Panthers will be making their way back to South Florida after the game against Anaheim. There'll be a trade deadline in between. So, with this second game, all signs were indicating, even though Sergei Bobrovsky got hit by a puck in Los Angeles after not starting, needed 17 stitches. How caught off guard were you at first when you first heard that Spencer Knight was leading the Florida Panthers onto the ice right before puck drop?
Yeah, so that came as a little bit of a surprise because Bruno made it clear yesterday and then again at morning skate today that Bob was going to be getting the start. So anytime you see something like that, it's a little bit shocking, a little uncomfortable. But then you see immediately I reached out to David Dwork to find out a little more detail about what's going on, and he quickly got back to me. He told me that Bob was warming up, was out on the ice taking regular shots. So it doesn't seem to be anything too serious. He could have played if needed, but doesn't hurt to give him an extra day or two off. And Spencer more than held his own in this one. That's two pretty solid starts for him in a row.
Absolutely. And even though Andrew Burnett after the game talked about how he was feeling a little bit of a flu after, and that he didn't mention anything about the 17 stitches. I mean, I haven't had stitches on my mouth. I have had stitches like near my ear before. But can you only imagine when you have stitches around your mouth and even trying to crack a smile? Like that must be so difficult to do. And when you're a goalie back there, you have facial reactions of like when pucks are coming your way that your face is bound to move. You can't be still in the crease like that. Like that's it would make Sergei Bobrovsky not human. in order to ask for something like that after receiving 17 stitches just 2 days ago.
Yeah, and I immediately think of communication with the D-men, especially behind the net, and that kind of conversation that has to happen between the goalies and the defensemen back there retrieving pucks. It can't be easy when you have that amount of stitches in your mouth area and still super swollen. You could see him on the bench. Looks like he'd been stung by a bunch of bees. Definitely can't be comfortable to communicate with the D back there. So. He may have a little bit of a flu thing, but maybe best to give him a couple of days off with that busted lip.
And the fact that he was able to dress is very encouraging too. I mean, I'm hoping that the Florida Panthers, when they do face off against the Vegas Golden Knights, I mean, it's going to be a back-to-back. Interesting to see. Spencer Knight got the start last go-round against the Vegas Golden Knights at home. And are they going to... Usually in a typical situation, you would think Bob would start the first end of a back-to-back and then Spencer Knight would get the second. I mean, also depending on the team that they go against. But if Bob were to not have these stitches, you would think, of course, starts tonight against the San Jose Sharks, would start against the better team in Vegas, and then Spencer Knight would be in Anaheim. But you would have to think, with the recovery from stitches, they could easily flip it the other way around to get even more rest.
Yeah, I could definitely see them doing that. And if Spencer ends up getting the nod in Vegas, I think we can all be comfortable with that, given how he performed against them last time. He had a near shutout against them the first time we played Vegas this year, and I think he can definitely handle them as a team. A little bit different environment because Vegas is a very, very tough building to play in. But I think we'd be okay with Spencer Knight in goal in that one.
And let's talk about Spencer Knight a little bit in this one. Gets the start, like I said, surprise start. Goes 24 of 26. The quite unfortunate circumstances. First goal that Spencer Knight gives up, it was a result of really, even though it was on the power play, basically the Florida Panthers were down 5-on-3. Gus Forsling takes a puck to the knee after a shot from Erik Karlsson, and that's Erik Karlsson's only third game back, and we're really sometimes I don't watch the Sharks all the time, but sometimes it's really easy to forget if you don't watch them all the time how good Erik Karlsson really is. And they showed a stat of like the San Jose Sharks average half a goal more per game when Erik Karlsson is there and 3 more shots on goal. But Gus Forsling takes one to the knee. He has a hard time getting up after the fact. And of course, it was the right call not to blow the whistle for when you're on the defensive end and you don't get the puck out of the zone. But just an unfortunate circumstance. And then the second one for Spencer Knight, just a goal with zero traffic right in front of the net. And it's just like, once again, reminding us that Spencer Knight is in fact 20 years old. And we are going to see these consistent up and downs, even from the AHL level to the NHL level. It's kind of confusing at this time for a 20-year-old kid. He gets 2 shutouts in the AHL. He gives up 5 goals more than once in AHL. Gets that one game against the Sabres, giving up 1 goal. Looks decent against the LA Kings. Of course, in the shootout, it's going to go advantage quick. 2-time Stanley Cup champion. And then in this one, holds on to his own. It's crazy to see kind of the up and down that comes from a 20-year-old goaltender. But then we have to take a step back and tell ourselves, this guy is 20 years old. So even in a win like today, you kind of see like the way he's able to bounce back after giving up goals that maybe he wants back.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a rookie. He doesn't always play like one, but he is still a rookie. And the ESPN broadcast commented on it. Like, after that second goal went in, he really completely shut it down. And we've seen him do that from time to time. I think of there was another power play chance. It was shortly after the 5-on-3, Nick Bonino got a couple chances right in front of the net, and Spencer Knight made some miracle saves. We've seen him do that before. You think back to Game 5 of the playoffs last year, gives up a goal like 20 seconds or less than a minute into the game, first shot of the game, and then from there didn't allow anything. So he's capable of doing it. The second goal, he definitely wants back. The first goal, not much he can do about it. Forsling is laying on the ice prone for most of that shift. So it happens, but it's the bounce back after the second one that really opened my eyes. He didn't let it get to him, and he shut it down the rest of the way.
Once again, 24 of 26 for Spencer Knight, and definitely looking promising after these last two games. And hey, it's great to see after all of this. But we're going to talk more about this 3-2 win over the San Jose Sharks on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar. This is the time of year where I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good. These are going to be your new favorites. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bar with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere between 200 to 300 calories. Go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart and you'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. At Built Bar, they're all about taste. And they make it taste delicious first. They figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Second segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Jacobs Winans is joining me on this episode to discuss this 3-2 win over the San Jose Sharks. But with the Florida Panthers making the trip to San Jose, Joe Thornton got an opportunity to make his return for the first time after spending 15 seasons. They decided to do a pregame tribute to Jumbo Joe. And even though I'm not a Sharks fan, even though I didn't spend 15 years watching Joe Thornton there, can only imagine how special that reception must have been for someone like Jumbo Joe.
Yeah, so this is a really awesome night for Joe, getting that warm ovation and everything, the warm welcome home. You think obviously back to last year, it should have happened last year, but we had the COVID situation, so it's been a long time coming for him to get that first visit back to San Jose, and very, very real possibility that this is his last time playing in that building. So it's good that he got to go out on a win. But yeah, 15 years there, made a run right to the doorstep of winning a Stanley Cup until they ran into the Pittsburgh Penguins, and just an absolute legend of the game. Tonight was really a night about hockey legends in general, with what happened with Alex Ovechkin over in Washington, and I saw Jaromir Jagr sent him a message and half threatened to come back to the NHL, which with Jagr, you're never really sure if he means it. So really cool that those two things happened in the same night. It was a good night for hockey history.
Absolutely. And did you notice the starting lineup that they put up in this one for the Panthers?
Yeah.
Mason Marchment as well. Being in the lineup on to start the game. And Mason Marchment nearly scored in this one. Crashes right into the net. I believe he crashed into Noel Acciari, who crashed into James Reimer. And it created a big collision right in front of the net. Bob Bugner decides to challenge it, and of course, watching that replay over and over again, especially from the bird's eye view, it was always going to come back. And I kind of feel for Mason Marchment, growing up with his dad in the organization, knowing that city, that franchise coming in, really wanted him to score. I mean, Joe Thornton didn't score neither. 10 minutes for Joe Thornton, didn't get a single shot on goal in those 10 minutes. But let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Huberdeau, because he had a shorthanded goal in this one. And this is the second time in the last week that Jonathan Huberdeau has been involved in a shorthanded chance. The first time was on a breakaway. Itu Lustorainen has a breakaway and scores. This time, it was a different type of goal that Jonathan Huberdeau is used to scoring. It's different. 2-on-1 with Bennett. Brett Burns, a big name defenseman that many people around the National Hockey League know about. It's rare whenever you confuse someone like Brent Burns, and teams are so used to seeing Jonathan Huberdeau pass the puck and distribute it to find a shot. But I have to ask you a question. When you were seeing that 2-on-1 chance by the Florida Panthers, did you yell shoot at your TV?
I did, because Huberdeau has I'd say probably 75% of the time he's passing that puck. And even on the play, he looked to pass. He faked to pass a couple times, and Burns bit on the second fake. Brent Burns is a really savvy veteran. He was always going to cheat a little towards the open man in case Huberdeau did send it that way. And I think Huberdeau was thinking one little step ahead of Burns on that one. And he seemed to know right where to shoot that on Reimer, too, because Reimer didn't even move. You think Huberdeau probably knows the spots to pick on Reimer, given their time on the Panthers together. But that was just a wicked shot. And it really makes you think how many goals Huberdeau could score if he would just let that go a little more, because his wrist shot is definitely one of the top in the NHL when he lets it rip like that.
Yeah, and with the Panthers as well, when it comes to just confusing James Reimer all game, especially on 5-on-5. So I decided to look up these numbers right before tonight's game. In their last matchup against the San Jose Sharks, 46 out of their 50 shots were at even strength. It was known coming into this game that the San Jose Sharks have been one of the worst 5-on-5 teams in all the NHL. Their penalty kill is outstanding. The Florida Panthers didn't get a power play goal in this one. They went 0 for 2. But even their power play has been a lot better. They got 1 for 5, and the Florida Panthers just in the first two periods, there's a little bit of undisciplined play. Jonathan Huberdeau is gone to the penalty box for roughing, a second consecutive game where he's heading to the box for something. But when there's a little bit of undisciplined, we can talk about undisciplined play, and the one in LA was definitely an undisciplined play, but that also gives me that sign of someone who just really cares and really wants to win. I know that that roughing created a 4-on-4 chance, but I mean, advantage Panthers in that situation with more space on the ice as well, going up against the San Jose Sharks. So I wasn't necessarily angry about that 4-on-4 chance for the Panthers.
Yeah, I think his passion is starting to boil over a little bit, especially as we get towards playoff time. And we saw this happen last year as the playoffs got closer. Huberdeau was involved in a lot more scraps, and he got a lot more physical, and that carried into the postseason. I feel like veterans who start to learn how to play that playoff style, they turn their game up a little bit in intensity as we get closer to playoffs, and he's starting to do that. So I don't necessarily like to see our star player dropping his gloves too much, but definitely perfectly fine with him standing up physically, as long as he does it responsibly, not like LA. That was a costly one, and he knows that. But yeah, no complaints about what he did tonight. And yeah, I mean, we can talk about undisciplined play all day, but the officials tonight were not at their best. Immediately, the Barkov high stick penalty comes to mind. It was a blatant flop. Completely missed it, and Uyghur gets a penalty for basically chirping from the bench. You don't see that too often, so yeah, they really needed to settle down after the second period. But Huberdeau, yeah, definitely, to me, it's a non-issue that he's turning up the intensity this time of year. In fact, it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I have on my notes right here on the penalty by Barkov, right here. Right, I wrote no embellishment ? By Jonathan Dahlen. So I literally wrote that. Yeah, and just not Bugner. Bruno talked about it on the ESPN ESPN broadcast after the game, talking about how they kept their composure throughout the third period. I mean, the third period they didn't commit a single penalty after 5 in the first two. But I mean, there was a really bad turnover by Radko Gudas that caused the hooking, and then that's what caused the shot to go to Gus Forsling's knee. There's another one where Marchment also got a roughing for 4-on-4 as well. So that was another one that Bennett also has a turnover that has a hold. And Mackenzie Weegar, he's been better this season when it comes to not throwing the puck over the glass. Last season, that was a big issue. And this one, this time around, it's like, man, it's been a little bit, and I haven't picked on Weegar for it. But there's also another opportunity that Weegar gave up to the San Jose Sharks where Spencer Knight loses his stick, and it's like right in front of the net, and Spencer Knight makes a incredible save. I believe that was also on the PK where that happened. So just got to give credit to Spencer Knight for standing up when he needed to on some of the mistakes Weegar made, both behind the goal line and that delay of game call.
Yeah, so Spencer definitely bailed him out on one of them, and then the penalty kill after Weegar's over the glass delay of game was super solid. But yeah, you talked about it. He's had an issue in the past with keeping that puck in play sometimes, and tonight's was a really weird one. It seemed kind of like a freak accident because oftentimes when a defenseman sends it out of play, he's doing it inside his own zone. Weegar had all day and cleared it out of the zone, and it went over the glass on the opposite end of the ice, which is really uncommon. I do have a theory on it. He plays so much on the left side as a right shot defenseman that I feel like sometimes when he's on the right side, he just puts too much muscle on it because he's on the near side instead of the far side. And tonight's in San Jose, he was on the right side of the ice and launched it over the right side glass. Where if he's on the left side, that's probably not going over the glass, if you see what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my theory on it, but you never really know. It could just be bad luck.
Yeah, it's like when you're on one side, but your stick is on the other. Your angles are different.
Exactly.
Somebody who played on the right wing for lacrosse, if I was on the left wing, I can't stick handle with my right to save my life. So I have to be on the left all the time, and that shot would go in a different way. So I could see where your theory is, and that, let's not forget that delay of game call was what caused the Florida Panthers to go 5-on-3 for, I believe it was only 22 seconds, but still big saves by Spencer Knight to help the Florida Panthers come up with this win. And I mean, the final period and overtime, 18-3 shot on goal advantage by the Florida Panthers. James Reimer, I lost count of how many times the Florida Panthers made him look like a turnstile in the final period and overtime, and just goes to show how this Florida Panthers team, when they can find ways to turn it on at any point, and it's frustrating sometimes, not gonna lie, when you but I also think it's part of pace as well. The Florida Panthers are starting pacing themselves so that they're not tired out by the time the third period comes around. And I mean, Frank Vatrano, just getting 2 goals tonight, both of them on one-timers, and he's played 49 of the 60 games, healthy scratched 11 of those 60 games, and just finds a way. And just let's talk a little bit about Vatrano. After a game like this, how much do you think his trade value has gone up, or if it has?
Yeah, so the ESPN crew was kind of talking about it, and you just felt like something was coming in that third period. The Panthers were all over the place and all over the Sharks zone. Pretty much chipped the paint off of the goalpost with the amount of times they hit the post in that period, and then you just kind of felt like something was coming, and it happened to be Vatrano. He seems to have a clutch gene. He comes through, dating back to last year, led us in overtime winners. And the dude can just shoot the puck. I mean, if nothing else, he can shoot the puck. So yeah, his clutch ability and the fact that he's so streaky. I don't even remember when his last goal was, and then out of nowhere gets 2 big ones tonight. So it goes to show that he stays ready. He's a professional, and his shot is always there. That's something that's not leaving him. So his trade value, I would think, is maybe not super high, but I don't think it ever really dropped too low. I think teams know his ability. he's just been buried in the lineup a little bit here this season.
His last goal came on January 1st against the Montreal Canadiens. So it's been a while.
Yeah, that is a long time.
So that was the last time that he found the back of the net. And let's not forget, the Florida Panthers had a minute and 30 seconds into the third period where they were on the PK. Just if they found, I told myself if they found a way to kill that PK to start, that they're gonna find a way to win this game. I mean, and now the Florida Panthers, when their opposition scores first since the All-Star break, have done it 3 times, where prior to that they've done it once. Those 2 previous times in the All-Star break were Carolina and Minnesota, the first 2 games coming out of the All-Star break, and then before that was that shootout win against Vancouver. So different types of situations for the Florida Panthers. They're learning, they're starting to pass the test more often than not on the road. And just the Florida Panthers getting 3 out of the 4 points is just where you want to be in this part of the road trip as they face off in these next 2 games to finish off the trip against 2 teams that are currently out of the wild card race in the Western Conference. But we're going to transition into the next segment where we will be talking a little bit about scores around the league and preparing the Florida Panthers for their next matchup against the Vegas Golden Knights on Thursday night. Another late night start for the Florida Panthers, a 10:30 start. So we'll talk about that more on the next segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I have Jacobs Winans here with me on this Winans Wednesday edition of the podcast. So some scores around the league. The Toronto Maple Leafs, despite all of their issues, defeat the Dallas Stars 4-0. Arizona, they've been on a little bit of a run lately. They've been winning a little bit. They get that game winner against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They win against Montreal. And that was their second win against Montreal. So we can definitely say that Montreal is probably the worst team in the NHL this year. New York, they defeat the Anaheim Ducks in overtime 4-3. Washington, they defeat the New York Islanders 4-3 in a shootout. Alexander Ovechkin is now third, as you mentioned earlier, on the all-time goals list. So he's just under like around 130 off of Wayne Gretzky. 4-1 Predators over the Penguins. Bruins defeat the Blackhawks in an overtime. Edmonton defeats Detroit 7-5. Vancouver 6-3 over the Devils. Avalanche 3-0 over the depleted Kings. But this is the matchup I want to talk about. I'm saving this one for last because this is the Florida Panthers' next matchup. The Winnipeg Jets defeat the Vegas Golden Knights by a final score of 7-3. The Winnipeg Jets get 7 goals on 23 shots. Alarming. Just looking at the box score. I didn't watch the game at all. But just seeing all the issues of Robin Leonard being out, Mark Stone on LTIR for the Vegas Golden Knights. I believe Alec Martinez is still on LTIR. I got to double check that. But I asked you prior to recording this episode of the show, but let's talk about it again because this is an alarming loss for the Vegas Golden Knights. What are the chances that Peter DeBoer gets let go before their game against the Panthers?
Yeah, so as far as DeBoer goes, I feel like his future is very, very uncertain right now. I don't know if they're going to fire him right this second because to me, I feel like firing him right now is kind of throwing the towel or waving the white flag on the rest of this season. Transitioning with a new coach at this stage in the season is a dangerous game, especially headed into the playoffs when you're fighting for that last spot. But as far as the playoff percentages, their odds, it doesn't look great for them right now. Given the games in hand, the teams that are right around them in points, it doesn't look great, and they have looked very, very dry offensively. Mark Stone being out hurts a lot. Jack Eichel probably hasn't been the game breaker they thought he would be. But yeah, I did see some of the highlights of their game against Winnipeg, and they gave up some really, really bad goals that just you don't expect those to go in. Kyle Connor tore them apart. Blake Wheeler, it was I mean, it was beginning to end. They just could not stop a beach ball in net, and that's a big concern for them.
Yeah, and the weird thing for Jack Eichel, in 14 games played, he has 9 points. Not bad for somebody who hasn't played in over a year, but just the fact that goaltending health has been an issue for them the last few months. I mean, just the last week for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, we talked about this on the last episode of Winans Wednesday. I mean, Carter Hart gets 47 saves out of 48 against Vegas. I mean, that was the start of their losing streak. I mean, after that, none of their games are even close. I mean, even though Columbus has fallen a little bit off the playoffs, I mean, they were still scoring in bunches. I mean, they scored 6 on them. Buffalo defeats them too. I mean, Buffalo has also defeated Toronto in the Heritage Classic. So Buffalo has picked up quite a few wins here and there. This is the part of the season where they're trying to play spoiler. Pittsburgh, who has probably the toughest strength of schedule, they're trying to make their way up in the Metro as well. So, but I don't know, Jacob. This matchup, Panthers historically don't play well at T-Mobile Arena, but this, despite all of their issues, this is just a game that's just really hard for me to just brush off because of all the talent that Vegas still has, despite how depleted they are.
Yeah, so this is the textbook definition of a trap game. A team that's now fighting for their playoff lives, probably fighting for their coach's life here. They're going to be very hungry. They're going to be on home ice, and they're going to want to try to get a big win, a statement win against a really, really good Panthers team. So the Panthers have to expect Vegas's best in that one. T-Mobile Arena is a hostile arena to play in, especially if Spencer Knight gets the start. They're not going to make it easy for him. So that will not be an easy game. It definitely will not be. And like you said, they have enough talent where regardless of their struggles right now, they can explode at any second. They have enough talent on that team where all it takes is one game and the floodgates can open. So yeah, I don't expect that to be an easy win at all. If anything, that's going to be one of the harder games on this trip.
And in 3 matchups at T-Mobile Arena historically by the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers, December 17, 2017, the Golden Knights defeat the Florida Panthers 5-2. February 28th, 2019, the Golden Knights win in a shootout. And then their most recent one, which hasn't been since February 22nd, 2020, the Vegas Golden Knights defeat the Florida Panthers by a final score of 5-3. So historically, not a pleasant building for the Florida Panthers to be in whenever they face off against the Vegas Golden Knights. Like you said, they're going to be fighting for their coach. They're going to be trying. They're kind of like that guy in that one episode of SpongeBob where he says food, water, atmosphere, where he's like on the floor, like crawling. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the Vegas Golden Knights right now. They're like crawling their way, especially with the health when it comes to their roster. But definitely, like what you said, a trap game. And honestly, a win on Thursday, regardless of what happens on Friday, it'll guarantee a 500 road trip for the Panthers. So that's really kind of like what my mindset is going into this game. Get that win, and you'll guarantee that.
Yeah, for sure. Every segment of the schedule is such a long marathon of the season. You kind of break it down in segments and try to win certain segments. And I think winning a road trip or getting 500 on a tough road trip like this is definitely a good marker for them at this point. And I really do hope Vegas does have a good game. I hope they bring it because the Panthers, like we've discussed, they haven't had a ton of adversity this season, and they could use a couple playoff type games on the road in hostile buildings to gear them up for what's coming. So if any year is the year they get the first win there in Vegas, this is the year to do that. So I'm looking forward to that one.
And they've been challenged these last 2 games. Of course, shootout can go any way in LA. You find a way to come from behind in this one. So the fact that they're doing this, their body clock's at like 10 p.m. Eastern coming in. So their bodies are going to be tired. I mean, jet lag is going to definitely catch up to them. but still they're finding ways to win these late game situations on the road. So it's very encouraging, definitely, to see for this Florida Panthers team. And like you said, segments, doing it in segments. And again, they win 500 over on the road trip on a very difficult one. Even though the California swing isn't what it used to be, you get wins there when you're traveling over 2,000, and you're very encouraged. So, Jacob, I want to thank you for joining me on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everyone where they can follow you online.
Yeah, definitely. You can find my work at pantherparkway.com, and you can follow me on Twitter. I'm most active there. That's going to be at Jacobs Winans 8.
Awesome, man. So thank you so much once again for joining the show. So make sure to follow Jacob on Twitter at Jacobs Winans 8, so you'll see anything that he has to say about the Florida Panthers. So the Florida Panthers will be flying to Vegas. They'll have a 4 p.m. practice at T-Mobile Arena the day before their matchup against the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll be providing all the updates on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, all before their matchup against the Vegas Golden Knights. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark. Will be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. And now for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Stu Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacobs Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.